District. Today is Sunday, September 6th. Time is 8:04. Call the meeting to order. And Assistant Secretary, Michael, do you have some announcements?
Yes. District would like to welcome Ed Chris from Bennett Engineering today. Casey Bland's here from Vail Resorts, and John Ryder and George Stahl from Kirkwood Resort Development and Kirkwood Property Services. This meeting is being fed live over the internet, and the public can view this meeting by going to www.msharp@kmpud.com and follow the KMPUD.com and follow the appropriate link. If the public would like to make a comment or ask a question, please email msharp@kmpud.com and the board will respond. Public, if you're going to make a comment, please identify yourselves. And that's my comment.
Eric, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Director Dornbrook is absent. Epstein? Here. O'Grady?
Here.
ND?
Here.
Rickard? Here.
Great. Item 4 is oral communication, public input. It's the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on non-agenda items relating to district business. No action can be taken by the board on matters not appearing on the agenda. Does anybody have any public input? Well, welcome, Casey. Can we ask you for a couple of update comments on the resort?
Sure.
Unless it's all business as usual. In which
No,
case.
I'm happy to. Thank you, and good morning to the board.
Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate the opportunity. I was thrilled. Obviously, I'll defer or pass some of the appreciation on to Mr. George Stahl and his wife Abby for yesterday's activity. And for all of us that were there, I know I recognize a few members obviously as well. It was a huge success from everything I've gathered, George, so congratulations there. Just want to start with that. As far as the resort, a couple of quick updates. And I think it's a matter on the agenda today as snowmaking is one. The clock is ticking for us, and we're only roughly 50 days away from making snow. So although it may still feel like summer, and it's kind of the traditional end of summer, we're really looking forward to getting things rolling. Snowmaking water capacity is looking good over at Cable's Lake. So November 1 is traditionally when we start to kick off. I know an agenda item is the Timber Creek snowmaking as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about that. And if I could add any comments to that at that time, that'd be great. And then our opening day is November 20th. So we're looking forward to that. Our teams have been very busy out on the mountain. There's not anything that's going to be a Cooper, thing to sing and scream about as far as new and different out there. But we did do a massive replacement of all the grips on Chair 4. That's the obvious big lift on the backside. And every so often we're required by the manufacturer to do that. Again, it's like replacing tires on a car maybe, but at the same time we know that it gives us reliability and consistency going forward. And it was just shy of $1 million. So for us, that's a heck of a lot of money for something that just adds to our reliability, but we're nonetheless pleased and happy about that. There are a number of other replacements and add-ons as well. One of the other minor things, but maybe some of us more passionate about, the Kirkwood Inn, we will be closing that as of the end of September for a period of time until mid-November. Over time, we've replaced a lot of the major pieces of that property, even though from the outside it doesn't look like anything different, but from the flooring to the back of house, the entire kitchen facilities, and this year we're replacing all the cooling and refrigeration equipment due to the fact that it needs it. That building, as loved as it is, it needs a lot of love going forward, and so we're having to tear out the entire cooling refrigeration system out of the back of that and replace all that. So that's going to take us about 6 to 8 weeks to do that work. So we're going to be in process of finishing that up. And hopefully hit the ground running just before we open on November 20th is our plan, as I mentioned. So we want to get that facility open too. We've undergone a number of extensive energy efficiency improvements and upgrades. The shop right over here is one. We've got rid of 2 more cargo containers. I don't know if you can tell all the stuff that's out there, but we continue to make an effort to clean up around here as best we can. So we're continuing to make efforts in that way. So from the little things to the big things, we're still trying to get our ducks in a row and improve upon the reliability going into the season. So thrilled to be a member of the community and looking forward to any interaction. If you folks and anybody in the audience has comments, questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Happy to talk. So thank you for the opportunity, Samish.
You're welcome. And Casey, one specific point is Tier 9, I guess you're replacing the motor or the drive, and how do you see that fitting in with our harmonics project, and specifically that one, and in general, what do you see as the timeline of the process working with Michael to get to all the lifts being in compliance with our harmonics system requirements?
Yeah, Michael, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but saying you shared the report with me that your consultant had done for you. I shared that same report with our experts back in Colorado, and there's some question as to his view on certain things, and experts being experts in their way. I mean, I think it's a way of looking at information in one perspective. It could be different as perceived by us, but it is our commitment to you and the board that we will face the issues and the worst ones that we have. And I can tell you right now, Chair 4 is much worse than anything has done by any of the other fixed grip lifts. And we have filtering on the detachables. We actually have filtering on a number of our lifts already. We went back and met with our consultant and engineer, and they went back and retuned and refined all of that filtering. So it's all working excellent. The fixed grip lifts, of which were in the report as part of the consultants, are ones that we will, work on as we can do. And the one for Chair 4, the filter that we were looking to do, is in the capital process for this coming winter or summer, I should say. So we are dedicated and willing and wanting to be a member of the community that address those issues. And I met with Michael about that the other day, and we're going to have a meeting week after next to follow up on some of those same issues and to get on the same page.
Okay, Tier 9 though, are you replacing that, and will that be in compliance?
It's Tier 9 is actually a drive, and we're rebuilding the motor bake and dip. So we take the motor and we send it out to an electric motor manufacturer for improvement and for reliability, and then we're replacing the drive. That has very little to do with the harmonics, and but it is something that will continue to be a focus for us going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other oral communications, public input? George, do you have anything you want to say on Kirkwood, your entities?
No, I think everything's moving along. We're working with Michael and with Casey on the storm drainage systems. That will happen toward the end of this month. So,
Thank you. Moving on to item 5, which is corrections to the agenda or consent calendar. I know we were going to pull 8I, but at this point, why don't we keep it on the agenda, which is the electric and water services for snowmaking, since Casey showed up particularly to hear the update, I think. So moving on, we'll go to 8. Excuse me, are there any additional consents to the agenda or consent calendar? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Move to adopt the consent calendar. Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Moving on to 8A, and by the way, schedule-wise, we have an 11 o'clock call with District Council, so we're going to try and manage this meeting to be over by 10 minutes of 11. 8A is discussion and possible action regarding recent personnel changes, areas of responsibility, and outlook for the balance of 2015 and 2016. Michael?
Sorry.
No problem.
After 3 years of stable personnel in our inner group, we have seen some changes to our personnel recently. Jill Campbell, our assistant manager in charge of administration, has given notice, and she has moved to Boise, Idaho, to be with her sister and a family, and have Colleen, her daughter, be closer to family. So this is Jill's last day here physically at the district. She'll be helping us out through the month of September, and I'd just like to publicly thank Jill for her decade of service to the district.
Thank you, Jill.
Kelly McBride, who you'll be hearing from extensively throughout this meeting, has been promoted to accounting manager. And Kelly's been with us for several years now, assisting Jill, and we're very confident in Kelly's abilities, and I look forward to working with her in her new position. So thank you, Kelly. And we do have an opening as a staff accountant. We have an ad in the paper. We've done a series of interviews, and we're looking to fill that position as well. So there's our 18 staff employees. We've had some movement as well. Rick Ansel has actually moved upstairs to be into the beehive, or so that he is more close to the administrative functions of the district. And Dave Waddle has actually moved into Rick's old office down at the firehouse. And Joe Pellern has actually moved into Dave's old office at the vehicle maintenance shop. So I think this makes a lot of sense. It pulls our forces together. Sean Trevette is actually given direction that we would like to see him more in charge of the administration of the fire department. So freeing Rick up to be in more of an administrative role. So these are, I think, real positive moves, and I think staff is looking forward for a good winter. So just want to bring the full committee and the public up to speed on these personnel moves.
What is the red arrow on the screen? Is that?
That is decorative and will be seen throughout the presentation, so don't. This is decorative.
Any comments, questions from the board or the audience?
Hard to top that one.
It's very decorative.
I just wanted to point out where you stood out there, Sandy.
Moving on to 8B. Well, first of all, congratulations, Kelly, and thanks again, Jill. We wish you the best, and obviously, if you come back to California, keep in touch, or keep in touch anyway. 8B, discussion and possible action regarding the district's financials, efforts to reduce expenses, and financial impacts of the continuing drought on the district's finances. Manager Sharp, the County Manager Kelly Robin.
I just wanted to, as a regular item, I've been putting up the rates. Here's our district utility rates. You can see that the CPI increase has been increased as of July 1st, and we have corrected the electric rate as discussed at the last meeting to not include the debt service that was brought up. So these are our current rates across the board. Seeing if there's any questions.
No.
And there being none, Kelly's going to go over our property tax allocations.
July financials.
Oh, July financials. July financials.
Starting on page 6 of your packet, we have the combined balance sheet. Just some notes on the larger items that show under total restricted, under cash, you'll notice that is over budget. And the total restricted line includes both fish fund accounts, our Mello-Roos account, and our Mello-Roos trust account, which is $473,000 that we don't budget for. So that's why that is so far over budget. It will remain that way until the Mello-Roos trust is paid back to Kirkwood Capital Partners. The total reserve is over, and this is due to the fact that we have yet to make our PG&E payment of just over $2 million. So once we make that large payment, both the reserve and the trustee special construction will come down into line with budget. Moving down to total accounts receivable. This does include customer AR of $362,000 and also accrued property taxes of $225,000, of which we received most of those payments in June, so that will come back into line as well when we, or in August, we received those payments, so next month that'll come back into line. Moving down to accounts payable. This includes a Q&D check for $614,000 that was paid in August, so that will come back into line. and also other current liabilities, you'll see is considerably over budget. And this is due to the fact that with the audit, we had to accrue some out valley expenses that have yet to be received for the Out Valley project, and this is $2.3 million, which includes the PG&E accrual and also $60,000 worth of Q&D retention, and also $150,000 for the Chair 1 credit balance that we have yet to pay back to Vail. And that's all I have for the balance sheet, unless there's any questions. Okay. Moving on to the income statement, combined income statements on page 8 of your packet. Some of the big notes, you'll notice salary and wages are over budget, and this has to do with the $1,550 of on-call pay that's not budgeted for. It's $50 a day for 31 days. So, and then also raises were not included in the budget. So that brings that total up. And then also our budget is straight lined for each person working 5 days a week, 4 weeks out of the month. But the way the days of the week fell in July and our schedule, instead of posting the straight 3,100 hours of time, we actually posted 3,400 hours. So it just has to do with the way the days of the week fell and the way our schedule fell, rather than the straight line budget. Moving down to operations and maintenance, the biggest part of that savings is the $17,000 in Out Valley O&M costs, which have yet to be booked. We're not posting anything for that yet because that is not yet closed, that portion of the Out Valley project. But it is $17,000 worth of that budget that we didn't post yet. And one last item, at the Finance Committee meeting, I will be adding a budget number for the property tax revenue. I did not upload that budget number, but as discussed at the Finance Committee meeting, that will be added. So the $72,250 in other revenue is for property tax allocation. And that is all I have on the combined income statement, unless there's any questions. One quick note on some of the individual funds. On page 10 of your packet, the fire department, you'll notice the salaries and wages are up, and this is just due to the barbecue. All of the staff that worked at the barbecue caused that to go up. Moving on to electric on page 16 of your packet. Just a couple of notes about the budget for electric now. All of our operations and maintenance is now included under the operations and maintenance line. In the past, we had put some budget into contract service and operating expenses, but those accounts are not RUS compliant. So we are now putting all of our budget into RUS compliant accounts, as well as making sure we post to only RUS compliant accounts. So you'll notice there is a little bit posted in contract services and operating expenses for electric, but that will be reclassed to the RUS compliant accounts. And this helps with when we complete our Form 7 each month, it stops from having to do double work. And then one last note on propane on page 19 of your packet. The cost of goods now includes the fuel surcharge that was previously shown as a negative revenue line item. Now it is included under cost of goods. So it shows as an expense as it really is. And that's all I have for...
Kelly, that's an expense because it's generally been
It was an
credit to
right,
customers, right?
exactly.
For some reason, propane costs were to spike.
It would show as a credit to the expense of cost of goods, which is really what it's supposed to do, is cover that expense. So we're just now showing it in the right spot to make it a little clearer. Moving on to August preliminaries, just a couple of quick notes that the operating revenues are actuals. We did have those posted. The expenses obviously are estimated, and in the version that you have, not so much that, but the version that's in your packet, you'll notice that all the operating costs are shown under operations and maintenance. And this is just due to the fact that the August budget has yet to be uploaded to PCS. And once that's uploaded, there will be budget line items in operations and maintenance and, operating costs and contract services. Moving on to your cash waterfall, and this is on page 22 and 23 of your packets. Just a couple of notes. The budget for June of 2015 in this waterfall is the actual budget number from the 14-15 approved budget. But our actual projection for the end of year for June was 2.7, which is right in line with what our forecast says. So, but we have to put the budget number from the approved budget. So we're more in line than what this seems to show. Some of the main reasons why there is such a swing between the budget and the actual forecast is due to the fact that the budget accrues property tax revenue, but the cash waterfall shows the cash when it's actually received. And then also, we did not budget for the large cash payouts for the Chair 1 credit. We had originally planned on showing a smaller credit to the Chair 1 account over 2 years, but that's been changed. So that's the other reason for the swing from the budget. And then...
Can I just
Sure.
clarify something? So the budget line, which is the 3.1,
Mhm.
1.7, 1.7, 2.4, and so on, that's the budget in our income statement?
That would be the budget from the
Or the budget from the cash?
cash.
It's a cash budget?
Yes. And
So I don't quite understand why the property tax thing would make a difference then, because in the cash, you would never straight line it.
but the cash is accrued. The cash rolls from the income statement. That's the way it's.
Okay, it's not actual, okay, so it's still accrual stuff. If
Right,
there's
right.
cash, that makes it very hard to understand.
Uh-huh.
Is that the way it's supposed to be done?
I think it's something we should address. It doesn't make sense to me.
Because I just want to see the cash.
Yeah, that actually should be what we think cash will be. So we'll look at that.
Yeah, we can look at that. We can actually, I believe that we can actually budget property tax receipts as we believe that they'll be received rather than the 72,000
For the purpose of cash.
for the purpose of cash, not for the income statement.
That's a good point.
We'll take that as an action item.
Yep.
For the current year or for next year's budget?
Next year.
What?
Next year?
Yeah. I don't think it should. I agree with that direction.
And then just one last thing on the cash waterfall. The 5-year cash low is shown to be in December of 18. And this is due to switch station costs. And this does still take into account all of the switch station being built, this cash waterfall.
And this takes into account not paying off the early Russ loans that we could pay off, right? It means
Yes.
rolling those over.
Mm-hmm. And that is all I have, unless there's any other questions.
Good, thank you. Any questions from the board or the audience? Thank you. So wanted update is the last topic on 8B?
Yeah, all also in your packet is the Out Valley cost forecast, which has not changed from the last board meeting, except to reflect the expense of $600,000 retention payment to Q&D, which was approved by the board. So this has been stable in the last month. The district auditors, Mouse Adams, have completed their pre-audit review in June and their field work in mid-August. All aspects of the audit are on course, and the auditors have met with the district staff and the board treasurer, Epstein, and discussed preliminary findings. No major discrepancies have been observed. Moss Adams has informed the district that it is required to report on the CalPERS retirement unfunded liability for the year ending June 30th, 2015. And CalPERS stated that necessary information for the posting this liability won't be made available until September 8th, which is the third delay that we've seen. And this all relates to GASB 68 and the changing in that posting on the liability sheet. This development will impact Moss Adams' ability to issue the district's 2015 financial statements on September 30th as planned. The extent of the audit procedures required is unknown at this point and could impact the timeline and the cost of the audit. This is further detailed in the letter from Moss Adams, which is detailed in your packet. Moss Adams has stated that they are on track with all other aspects of the audit and will be providing their standard preliminary recommendations, including their letter of recommendation for the October Finance and Board meetings. And if you'd like to comment.
No, I met with the auditors and spent a lot of time with them, and everything looks, preliminary looks fine. So that's good. And as far as any recommendations go, we talked about various ideas of how we can make improvements, and they're going to consider them, and we'll see what they have to say in October. They also set my expectation that because it's going to take longer, it will cost more. So we'll see.
Kelly, before you read Spanish, can I go back to the previous item? I do have a question. On the Out Valley expense breakdown on page 25 of the packet, I think the implication is that after all the Out Valley expenses are paid, we would have about $800 to $900,000 left in the reserve fund. That's the 3.2 minus 2.18.
That's where it shows on the cash waterfall.
Well, my confusion is that on page 25, the implication is that it would be $800,000 or $900,000 left. But when you went over the balance sheet, which is up on page
Well, I get $1 million for 3.2 minus 2.2.
page 6.
Yeah, it has
I thought that-
932,000.
I thought that, with the special trustee construction was 900,000 and total reserve 3.2 million. I sort of did a quick math when you were going over that we'd have 1.3 million left in the reserve after paying off all of our expenses. I'm just wondering, am I interpreting that right? I'm several $100,000 off when I look at what you said about the balance sheet versus what I see in that.
I think
Page
that has to
25.
do with the fact that the original projection was 1.2 million of overages, and now we're up to 2.1 million. Am I?
No, I don't believe so. So in the updated reserve forecast, after we paid for the Out Valley expense, I showed 932,000 left in the updated reserve forecast on the bottom line. And this is showing a current reserve balance of 3.2 minus the 2.1, so that's about a couple $100,000 off. Is that the question?
Yeah, I was just looking at the balance sheet. It says total reserve 3.2, trustee special construction fund is 900,000. That's 4.1 million we have to pay off these expenses.
No, I think the rest funds and bank is included in the current reserve funds? Or is that incorrect? That might be incorrect.
I'm just trying to grasp, since I feel like we're walking a tightrope a little bit with this reserves and everything, I'd just like to know, you know,
Well,
if we agreed with all the expenses and invoices we're getting or expect to have, and we were to pay them off, what would we have left in our reserves? Without touching the operating funds. That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah, I would think that the cash waterfall would be the place to go with that, and that if we paid for all of the out valley expenses, not including the switch station, that we'd have $932,000 left in our reserves.
So it even gets worse and worse every month, it seems like.
Well, the overage comes out of the reserves, so, yeah. We had an extra $600,000 in overage. The total trustee special construction is money that we borrow.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the other is reserves that we put away.
Yeah, but
That's the difference.
our balance sheet indicates that we have 4.1 million.
Right.
4.1 million minus what you said we were going to be having to pay out. I got to be 1.3 million, but this other sheet indicates 900,000. So that's what was that discrepancy that I was trying to resolve.
I'll do a reconciliation between these two sheets, and
Yeah, I make sure. Okay, thanks.
On the audit, with the CalPERS determination, are we facing a change in our a material change in our liabilities?
I don't think that everyone knows how GASB 68 is going to impact folks and how they're actually going to make us report it. We have gotten recent information about our liability from CalPERS, from our actuarial, what they're anticipating it to be, but I haven't seen the new information. Later in the agenda topics, I actually will be showing what that liability will be.
Okay.
They said to expect some expense this year and some expense we'd have to apply to the previous year and restate it.
Okay, so expense in fiscal 2015,
Yeah.
and we would have to restate prior.
And prior year.
And I haven't fully understand this GASB 68, but why is that? What's the issue, briefly?
Is actually mandating that all public agencies post their unfunded
I
liabilities
see.
on their balance sheets. We had a number posted and it actually was pulled off because of this. We wanted to get an actual number, and the auditors asked us to pull it off from last year so that we can get an actual number, which will supposedly get through the GASB 68.
And the impression I had is this used to all be aggregated at CalPERS, and now it's distributed out to all agencies. And the reason why, for the delays, they had to calculate what that number is for every agency they represent.
Any questions from the board or audience on 8B, district's financials? Okay, moving on to 8C, discussion of possible approval of payment to PG&E in the amount of $2,262,753 for work completed with the construction of the Out Valley Electrical Project. And this is, I guess, basically an update and a preliminary calculation. You're not asking for approval today because we haven't gotten the bill.
That is absolutely correct.
Welcome, Jill.
I'm just going to briefly go over what we received from PG&E. In the packet is their total cost projections. At the top of the page is just a summary of each of the categories. They show the T-line, PG&E, credit issued to PG&E, that's the transmission line tap. They're saying total cost was $2.1 million. And then you have the breakout of the substation cost. The Salt Springs is $1,480,000. The Tiger Creek is $1.4 million. And then the next three items are all their engineering review. It's the $197,000, the $360,000, and the $18,000. And then the next two are their study costs. And finally, the 12 kV distribution line, showing what their total cost is of just over $6 million. That is total cost shown by PG&E, but not what the district needs to pay. On going down, there's on line 23, there's a credit issued on the transmission line of $224,000, and also on study costs there is a credit of $63,500. So if you look at column F on the spreadsheet, that it's $5.7 million, and that is total costs that the district needs to pay. And then column G through K on this spreadsheet is all the payments or credits paid to PG&E, showing that the remaining owed is $1,985,485. That's column L. That's the cost not including ITCC, and that cost is $277,000 in column R, showing the total amount still due at $2,262,753. And we have just been in discussions with PG&E. Staff has looked at this, and so has Michelle Gamble, and we all believe this is an accurate amount still due. But we have not received a bill from PG&E on this yet.
So this includes their the proper allocation of the improvements that are actually already there, that we discussed or not?
The proper allocation, okay, so that would be a cost of ownership charge, and that's not.
Oh, it's only that, okay. Right, okay.
And do they continue to say that they do not need to provide any backup to these costs?
We have backup, but it's not much more than what we have here. So I think the answer is yes. From what you've seen, as far as the backup is what we've received.
There is
And does the internet, remind me, does the interconnect agreement, is that what it's called, the IA, specify that they don't have to provide backup? And we have no right to request backup?
I think that in statements and in literature that we've received from PG&E.
But is it in the agreement?
I don't know specifically. I can follow that up.
I don't, as the most recent signatory to the agreement, I'm pretty sure it doesn't say, quote, they don't have to provide backup.
They have been requested to at least provide backup. If you column C and column D on the spreadsheet, column D is a 12/31/2014 forecast, and column C is the most recent 4/23 forecast, which is a difference of $58,000, and they have been requested to give backup on why there was a change from December to April. But that's the only actual backup they have said that they would provide.
And when they give backup, it's not time and material numbers. It's like they break it down to the Salt Springs number would be broken up into engineering, materials, things, general columns like that. And we have received that, but that's as far as we've
Okay,
ever.
well, I've requested this before, and I haven't seen it, so I assume it hasn't been yet provided, but, we sit here trying to manage, fulfill a certain fiduciary responsibility, right, to our ratepayers and to the district. And, in any position, with any project I've ever worked on in my career, I've never just paid something because somebody said, here, this is what you owe. You look at it and say, is it reasonable? Is the number of hours at the rate that they charge reasonable? For example, for all the engineering. Does it make sense? And one of the things that I've asked for to try to see if it makes sense is, what were our engineering costs? Exponential and what was it called, power engineers. what were those costs for engineering the entire system? What were PG&E's costs for engineering their portion? And how do they compare? I mean, it seems to me that PG&E's portion should be way less than engineering the entire system. I don't know how they compare. I mean, that's one source of understanding whether it's reasonable and whether or not we, just say fine, or we challenge them in some way.
Yeah, I heard you make that request, and I have that data, and I will be presenting it.
Any other questions, comments from either the board or audience on the PG&E topic? Well, I would like to come back to you offline after digesting the spreadsheet a little further. 8D is discussion and possible action regarding, sorry, thank you, Jill. Regarding the construction closeout and completion of the underground portion of the Out Valley Power Line project. There's 6 topics, and I won't read them.
Staff continues to work on closing out the Out Valley project, including the fiber. Fiber work repairs are complete, inspections are complete, and the district is to be reimbursed for the costs that Edge had during the outage through the Q&D retention. The state Route 88 repairs are complete. The cost of approximately $30,000. The budget on that was $80,000, so I think that worked out quite well. The Caltrans claim is in the works. It will include the State Route 88 repairs and the shoulder of the road issue and the French drains. The as-built have been received from EEC, and they're being packaged up for submission to Caltrans. And we're still waiting on the PG&E as-built for the 4 poles that they built. Retention, we're holding $60,000. The fiber costs, as I mentioned, will be taken out of that for a $55,000 retention to be paid to Q&D. This has been delayed because their balancing statements aren't matching. Final payment is delayed till October. Unfortunately, that will delay the certificate of completion. Has also been delayed until October to close out the underground. But that's just a formality, so we are very close to completing the Out Valley project besides the switch station. And in September, we will be closing out the SWIP, the environmental. So the last board action for the Out Valley project will happen in October with the closing of the underground, and that'll be the completion of the project. So excited about seeing that. This is a communications vault before the project. You can see that the water was quite high in it, and the cables are down in the bottom. And this is our crews pumping them out, and then Edge came in and attached everything. That's a nice dry pit with the ceiling done and everything placed up on the side of the project. So I think that looks really good. And with that, I take any questions on the underground portion.
So just for clarification, all these cost numbers in here are preliminary because we haven't agreed on them between staff and Q&D and
Yeah, but
RCI?
they're pretty minor numbers.
Okay. Any questions on 8D, completion of the Out Valley, from either the board members or the audience? Great, look forward to polishing that off, Michael. 8E is discussion and possible action regarding the final issues and ongoing maintenance associated with the Out Valley Power Line project.
The finalized work plan has been approved by the Forest Service with considerable work. The district is in the process in completing the required grading and fill work on the overhead underground, the Out Valley underground. We should be actually complete with our first phase next week. With the major priorities, and then we'll have time to go back and look at more minor items as we go along, including the trail access and some of the water bars. The invasive weed monitoring has been completed, and no new occurrences of A-listed species have been observed. There has been observed some bull thistle, has been expanded on the 34 kV line from the substation to the line check. So we're working with the Forest Service on that. We did meet with the Forest Service at Salt Springs on Tuesday, who are pleased with our maintenance and inspection efforts and appreciate our communications and working with them on the environmental and maintenance aspects of the project. And just to show you some of our progress on the erosion control, you can see the erosion damage that happened due to the flash floods that we saw in December and in February. And so the district staged fill material at various locations and then went out, and the results are quite nice. And this is what the Forest Service is pleased about. I think we left the project better than what than we came and found it at. So with that, I'll take any questions on our ongoing maintenance efforts.
Either from the board or the audience? This might be a short meeting. Moving on to 8F, introduction and presentation by Bennett Engineering's Ed Cruz, the district's new wastewater and water engineer. Welcome, Ed.
As the board is aware, Matt Wheeler left Bennett Engineering, our wastewater engineering firm, to work with the city of Lincoln, and the district wishes him the best of luck. Happy to introduce Ed from Bennett Engineering as our new engineer. Staff has already been working with Ed and found him quite knowledgeable and responsive. And I was wondering if you might have a few words for the board and the public.
Sure, great, thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for the invite, and I appreciate the work that is being done up here. A little bit about me. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of California. I've original transplant from the Midwest, like many, and did my tour in the Bay Area for a little while. But for the past 25 years, I've worked actually for the city of Roseville. I was a water utility manager, and then most recently the director of utilities, responsible for the water, wastewater, solid waste operations for the growing community of Roseville. Retired in January, and was asked by Bennett Engineering to come on and help with some contact for some of the special projects and the needs, especially to fill the role that Matt Wheeler had left. So looking forward to this opportunity to be a part of Bennett Engineering, and also to be able to provide support to the clients as we can, to make sure that you see us as trusted engineering advisors that we hope to be. So with that, you'll be seeing and hearing more from me in the future, but I'm just looking forward to getting engaged and understanding a little bit more about what Michael's needs are as we continue to support the district.
Thank you. Great, and thank you for that introduction. There's some specific items that you want to cover?
Yeah, I'll make intros on those. If that's all right, Standard?
Sure.
So the Master Services Agreement is in your packet on page 41. It's with Bennett Engineering. It calls for general engineering services on a time and material basis as requested by the district. It also calls for project work to be detailed on a task order format and approved in advance. This agreement has met the district's needs in the past. It is a continuing agreement, and we're not looking for any action. I just thought it was important to bring this before the board, make sure that you understood the nature of our agreement with Bennett Engineering.
Freshly signed in the last few months?
I've signed no.
14.
2014.
April
Right.
2014.
Moving on.
Great.
We do have a task order before the board. It's for waste discharge report compliance. This is an agreement that we've had for several years. The district is required to submit quarterly reports and an annual report to the Regional Water Quality Control Board as per our waste discharge permit. Bennett Engineering has been producing this report for several years on a timely basis. It kind of looks like this.
Thanks.
This is what we're, and this is all from the change from when we went to stream sampling to groundwater monitoring. We drilled holes out into the meadow and actually sampled the groundwater rather than checking the streams. And we've been doing this for several years now. We submit all this data and test results to Bennett Engineering, and they massage it into the report that you're looking at, and then submit this to the state. And we have no compliance issues at this point. So it is district staff recommendation for approval of this task order for an amount not to exceed $12,228.
Mike, what's the difference between the two task orders that are included? I couldn't tell quite what the difference is between the two.
You mean the one for recycled water and the one for waste discharge?
Oh, one is purely for recycled water?
Right, and this one is just purely for waste discharge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's 1.1 and 1.2, right?
This task order is the WDR quarterly and annual reports. And it's detailed on page 48 as far as the cost at $12,228.
Right.
And is that about what it's cost each? Is this an annual? I mean, is this particular one an annual thing? This is the annual report?
Yes, it is.
And is this about what it cost last year and the year before?
Yes. It's 5 reports, 4 quarterly, and then an annual report
For this amount?
for this amount.
Oh, I see. And this is budgeted?
Yes, it is.
Any other questions from the board or the audience?
I just have one. The pH variation between summer and winter, is that mostly due to the fact that we use different wells and they have different pH in the water depth?
Well, that's one of the things, I could look into that a little bit more. Typically, what you'll see, though, is more of an influence in snow melt that's actually...
That's on the surface.
That's what I would anticipate that being, is more of a low pH snow melt that is impacting that. It's infiltrating.
Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve this task order.
So move?
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to 8F3.
District staff has been researching what it would take to utilize recycled water, wastewater for different application in Kirkwood. Proposed purposes are irrigation, dust control, and construction. Staff has been in contact with the Regional Water Quality Control Board, who have been very helpful in directing us. Our current effluent might meet the standards for tertiary 2.2 recycled water, which would mean that it could be used for a variety of purposes, but our current permit does not allow for recycling water, so we would need to enroll the PUD under a statewide general WDR for recycled water use. And before we could do that, we would need to do a Title 22 engineering report to the State Water Resource Control Board, Division of Drinking Water, for review and approval. The regional board and the drinking water have been working together to expedite any services that we might need. Staff would need to produce a project description, which needs to be as broad as possible so that you could capture what the district may want to do in the future, such as the use of a water transportation equipment. We talked about a 500-gallon trailer, but possibly in the project description we actually included a 2,000-gallon truck. Areas of possible uses, the dust control for parking lots, construction uses, and of course irrigation. Once the project description is complete, a Title 22 engineering report would have to be submitted. Once approved, the state could issue the notice of applicability coverage under the general order, and the district would need to file a negative deck for CEQA compliance. District would need to submit a Form 200 notice of intent to the State Water Resources Control Board. So besides district time, the Title 22 is estimated at $10,400, the NOI at $1,600, the permit at $2,000, and a trailer at around $6,000. So to get involved in recycled water would be a total expense of about $20,000. Staff is continuing to research grant funding for this issue. This has been brought before the Planning Committee, and Ed is here to answer any questions about his proposal. So I open up for questions.
What happened at the planning committee on this topic?
A couple of times back. I don't honestly remember.
I think that what we said was, if it could be covered with a grant, we'd be in favor of proceeding, but if it can't be covered with a grant, we don't think it's appropriate, given our cash position as right now, to proceed.
Is that staff's view too?
Yeah, that's staff's view as well.
Other comments or questions from the board or the audience?
Well, the only offset would be revenue, and what would we charge for the water? I mean, the same as irrigation rates? Or?
Yeah, well, we'd have to transport it. There's not much of a moneymaker, because you'd have to transport it, you have labor time. It's more of a feel-good project rather than any sort of a moneymaker.
It's more of a what project?
Feel-good, offsetting the use of domestic water by recycled water, is a good conservation method, but it would be costly at this point.
I guess what I don't quite figure out is when we put them in the absorption beds, it just goes back into the water table and it gets recycled that way. So is there any actual difference?
You don't need a truck or a permit.
That's one of the big differences, but it is the nature of the regulating agencies. So there's the
Right.
Regional Water Quality Control Board, which has the WDR, which is a discharge into the environment, then the Department of Drinking Water, make
Right.
sure that we're permitting that water for, in this particular instance, be full body contact for recycled water use. So it's just taking the same information, formulating it into an engineering report, and getting it to the department.
No, I understand why we need the additional procedure. My question is the amount of water actually the same, whether it goes back into the water table and we pump it out again, or prevent it from being absorbed and distributed by truck? Is the water about the same?
Volume-wise?
Well,
Yeah, because I think of it as we're 100% recycled water here, because all water gets absorbed back into the water table.
it's not really true, because I don't think.
Well, during evaporation, what people take home with them.
No. No. It's because I believe our absorption beds all have to be upgradient. I mean, our absorption beds have to be down gradient from the sources of water. That's why we don't know whether we can drill for a new well, at the north end of the meadow, right? Is that right, Michael?
Right, our
So,
groundwater.
so anything that's going into the absorption beds isn't going into the water that we pump, right? That would be.
Absolutely correct. That's why we weren't able to use well number 1,
Yeah.
which is down by Hockley, because they were anticipated that they were under the influence of our absorption bed. So we discharge further.
Yeah, I mean, it goes into the streams ultimately, maybe in American River or something, but not into our community.
Yeah, our groundwater comes from higher ore from cables, if that's the direction that they're
Okay.
underground.
I see your point, though.
And people know for sure that once it goes underground, it
Doesn't come
flow
back.
east.
No, they don't.
No.
Yeah, well, okay.
I think it flows to El Dorado Hills, actually. Rosewood, yeah. Roseville. Yeah.
So I think you have consensus that if this can be covered with a grant, we'd consider it, but if it's if it's an expense to feel good, we're not that open to it.
And thank you, Ed, I appreciate you coming.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
Moving on to 8G, update and possible action on changes by CalPERS in reporting and invoicing the district's employer contributions, unfunded liability, and side fund. Okay.
The district has been informed by CalPERS that they're changing their billing process for required contributions, retirement contributions, starting with the 2015-16 fiscal year, which we're in now. In the past, CalPERS billed the district for its retirement contribution, the unfunded liability, and the side fund as a percentage of payroll. Those are the three factors. CalPERS will now be separating these expenses with the unfunded liability and the side fund being billed at a flat monthly dollar amount, and the retirement contribution continuing to be charged as a percentage of payroll. This change will actually result in a savings for the district, as this slide here reflects, savings of approximately $20,000. This is due to that when you have a high ratio of active members to retirees, like the district has, experience a reduction in the required contribution toward their unfunded liability. Now, this number may change with GASB 68, but their anticipated numbers at this time shows that we're dropping our total expense down to 13.9% of total payroll from last year of 18.82.
Michael, just if I can ask a question here. So what GASB 68 might do is place a new liability or a different liability on our balance sheet. But what this would do is decrease our expenses on our income statement.
It's decreasing our expenses because they reallocated our
Right.
employer portion of our retirement contribution.
Right. So
But
it's
our
got
side fund currently, and our unfunded liability is currently estimated at $177 for the side fund and $468,000.
but that goes on our balance sheet. Yeah. So
That's liability.
if I'm interested in the cash issues, I might be more interested in this drop in the percentage
Our
of payroll.
expenses, yeah, and our expenses are anticipated to go down by $20,000. For 2015, the side fund is the amount that is an amortized bill or expense that was, when we went to a 2.5 at 55 benefit ratio, they calculated that expense over the life of our contract, and then billing us for that expense over a period of time rather than just all at once. And I think we have 11 more years on this bill, and then the unfunded liability. So looking forward, our combined balance between those two numbers is $645,000. Our annual cost is anticipated to be $151,000, and as mentioned, that's approximately 13.9% of payroll. And looking forward, costs are anticipated they're anticipating a 3% increase, but you can see that our balance on the combined balance does go down every year as we pay off these unfunded liability and the side fund. So these are the numbers from CalPERS, and I want to give the board a look into not only our past, but our future anticipation.
So how does this compare to our past costs roughly? If we're going to be paying $151,000 in 2015, that's an actual, is that?
That's a estimate for 2015, and that is down, but then you can see our annual costs do increase each year over the next.
So calibrate, what would 2014 look like? Roughly.
131, 140 something.
And are these numbers in the budget?
Now these numbers came out, I don't know, but we did increase our CalPERS expenses by I think 2% or 1% for like any expenses in the budget. So these are probably a little bit higher than the budget because these are calculated, I believe, on the 3% increase.
So if we've always talked about this is our high cost of debt, and if we had the money, which we don't, we might pay this off. If we don't do anything, it goes away over 11 years.
Yes,
And it's 8%.
7.5%.
Do we have the option to pay early if we wanted to?
Yeah, and we would then borrow it, whatever. Right.
So
this-
that's why.
I'd
Well,
prefer to make
our
money and
cost
not
of
borrow.
money is probably better than 7.5%.
And so this is good news because in the past, they didn't know what our portion of the unfunded, we're in a pool, in the miscellaneous pool. They didn't know what our portion of that, or they couldn't calculate it, and we couldn't pay it off. Now they're getting to a point where we've always been able to pay off our side fund, but the unfunded liability is now being drilled down so that we could actually pay that in advance. And this is just going along. This isn't impacting all of the special districts, anyone that's involved with CalPERS.
Great. Anything else on CalPERS?
I'm pleased it's so benign. I would have thought this was going to be much more unpleasant.
We're small, but mighty.
Yeah, this has crushed many small and large entities. So it's nice not to be in the potentially crushed category.
Yeah. Anything else on 8G CalPERS topics? 8H, discussion and possible action related to the district's research and efforts to improve the efficiencies and minimize the losses of each department as measured in performance reporting. Welcome, Brandy.
So we continue to see a roller coaster effect in our performance reporting. As you know, last month in July, our numbers were higher than anticipated, but the August numbers are quite a bit more on track, and they're bringing our average down. So if we take a look at electric, you'll see our total production for the month was 365,815 kilowatt hours. With a total loss of 69,475, or 19%. And that is broken down. Our losses, you can see here, the KM Blue transformer loss is about 9,000. KM Green is about 10,500. And our distribution system losses, which are our measured losses from the powerhouse feeder relays, are currently at 8%. Not shown on this board, we did do a breakout of that. Our commercial portion of that 8% came up to 6.6% commercial loss, 1.2% loss in lifts, and a 0.3% loss in residential.
What was the commercial again? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
6.6%.
Yeah.
So our out valley line loss it continues to be just the what's left over from the rest of these. But we're at 4% this month. And I do want to report that during Dave Wrightley's recent visit to Kirkwood, he did adjust the taps at the KM Green transformer to raise our transmission voltage slightly in hopes that that will reduce our out valley line loss. And we offset that by lowering the voltage of the KM Blue transformer. So it's too soon to tell if that 4% is actually an improvement that we see and will continue to see, but that is our hope.
Hey, Brandy, was the drop in the distribution system losses, because that drop was a much bigger drop than the decrease in our production. Was that a result of any particular action taken?
No.
No.
And we did take a look into our July numbers to see if we could pinpoint any particular cause for the high numbers, and we were not able to come up with a particular cause.
And our goal for the year is that 19%?
It's 18%.
It's 18, so.
We're at 19% for this month. So we're still a little high, but we should see our percentages get better over the course of winter months with higher production.
Yeah.
And that's based on the theory there's a minimum amount of electricity used to produce the heat, and everything above that is lower.
If we move on to propane, our actual propane usage for the month of August was 445,977 cubic feet, with a metered total of 428,000. So a 4% loss for the month of August, bringing us to a 10% loss total for this fiscal year, the 2 months of the fiscal year. This is still high, but we do anticipate that with increased usage and cold temperatures that we will get there. On water, we had a good month for water. A total production of 659,762 gallons, with a metered total of just over 600,000, an 8% total loss, where we are shooting for a 16% goal for the year. And you can see there that we have broken out some of our identified system losses, and those are all estimates. I did want to note that previously on the identified system losses category for water, we were including construction use. And construction use is metered via hydrant meters. So on this report and going forward, I've moved that up into the metered category because it is not actually a loss. On wastewater.
Why do you think there'd be that dramatic a swing in water?
One thing we did note in water was this month in August, we had a positive level increase in our tanks. So we gained approximately 15,000 gallons in our tanks, which was not counted as a loss for August. As for why the July numbers were so high, we have not been able to find a cause. Lastly, wastewater also had a good month, but this continued from July. Our metered wastewater, which is metered at the influent meter of the wastewater treatment plant, was approximately 500,000, with an actual metered of our customer use of 451,000. So our total unmetered in wastewater was approximately 9%. And we did have some estimated identified losses, which are listed here. So our unmetered, unidentified losses for the month of August were 6%.
And this is actually another seasonal issue here. If we ever wanted to drill down and do a monthly goal, it'd be much more appropriate because our springtime, as you'll remember, is astronomical compared to this. So we're going to look good till May. And then with all these huge storms that we're going to have some
Wipe you out.
wipe us out. And, we're hoping to have huge infiltration in May, June, and July because of the impact of the snowfall.
That concludes my report, unless there are any questions.
Thank you. I know most of them have the goals on there, but could you make sure they all have the goals on there?
I think we do.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a goal of 2% on, so in electric, the goal is 18%.
Okay, there, 18%.
2% in propane, 16% in water, and 30%.
Thank you.
And they're just not in the board package.
Oh, okay, we'll make sure that they're on the forms. I'm sorry.
Anything else for Brandy on? Sure, once you're...
Yeah, so last time we looked at these figures, there was some discussion about the ongoing work to look at the losses in the commercial electric area, and I didn't hear any comment on that. Is there anything to update on?
We are still ongoing on that project. We've currently made it around from the powerhouse over to the main lodge there by Chair 6. And we're continuing to look for any issues, unmetered applications and things
the numbers could be misinterpreted, right? That's commercial's percentage compared to the total usage, as opposed to how much unmetered was there in commercial itself. They're all pretty similar. It's just most of the electricity was in the commercial loop.
Yeah, we noted that the last time we had
Right,
that discussion,
yeah.
as I recall. So
Right.
Anything else on the efficiencies topic? Moving on to 8I, discussion and possible, thank you, Brandy. Discussion and possible action regarding a feasibility study to provide electric and water services for a snowmaking system at the Timber Creek area within 50 days.
District staff has been working with Vail on a proposal to, we went from establishing a rate for the consumption, selling water to a contract, a wholesale water agreement, which Dick Shanahan has recommended. Staff has received a sample that he has used from another, and staff is working on customizing that. Once we've customized it, I also have come up with a rate. Once I've customized the agreement and the rate and given it to Vail for their review, we hope to have that approved and back to the board so that we can begin and complete construction fairly rapidly on the district's part, because we just need to install a box for a water meter and a 2-inch connection for a Vail, and then move forward with the project. So I think we have the mechanism that we'd like to move ahead with. I have established a rate. We just need to get the administrative issues and get this over to Vail for approval. And Casey's here. Do you have any comments on our discussion?
Sure, thank you, Michael. Basically, just to kind of make this as clear as possible, what we're hoping to do is, basically, we have a fan gun, and we have several of them up on our mountain. These are the air compressed pieces of our operation. Basically, it has a little onboard air compressor, a very small one, little 5-horse. So basically what it is, we're asking the district to be able to tie into the potable water system to achieve the water portion of our snowmaking needs, and then we'll tap into an existing electrical supply at Chair 9. So it'll be just installing, and obviously all our cost, a disconnect so that we could plug in at the bottom of Chair 9, run, which is kind of a glamorous extension cord, if you will, to where the fan gun would be sitting. And then from the water side, we would install what we simply call a water hydrant, which you see them all over the mountain. In the summertime, if you're out there, you'll see them usually in pairs, air and water. But in this case, all we need is the water, because it has its own little onboard air compressor. So we would run from that tie-in of our water hydrant over to the fan gun. So the electrical and water would come to the fan gun. And then we'd hopefully be able to eliminate, I hope, the movement of snow transported via truck from the base areas we've been doing over the past many years over to Timber Creek. Timber Creek is really a huge service component for us due to the fact that it's usually where our family zone is, and all the ski and ride school programs emanate out of that area. So to keep it going, just keep it viable, we've had to truck snow over the past couple of years. And ideally, we won't operate this at all. But if need be, we would be running that over in the bottom of the Chair 9 area and then move it as needed with our snowcats. So it's a very quiet operation. If you've been around a fan gun, you really won't even hear the thing, versus a truck making 2,500 trips we made, not just the past winter, but the winter before. Yeah, that's how many times last year wasn't quite that many, but I'm looking to eliminate that if at all possible.
Great. Any questions from the board?
So when you say it's quiet, you mean compared to your snowmaking?
Air water gowns.
Yeah, which you're all with the house, so it's not that kind of quiet.
Yeah, it's not that type of snowmaking.
I think it's a consensus of the board that we'd like to see this happen.
November 20th.
Or earlier. 8J, discussion and possible action in district's role in monitoring compliance with the specific plan and other mitigation and environmental issues in Kirkwood. Manager Sharp.
This has been discussed at the last board meeting, and we've had received emails from district customers and comments from customers with regards to the monitoring and questions on the district's role on monitoring and collecting reports on mitigation measures throughout the valleys with respect to specific planning and environmental issues. And what should the district's role in this fashion be? In the packet, I put in the entire mitigation measures from the specific plans so that you could get
Thank you.
a feeling for that. And you note that each of these items has the mitigation measure, the action required, the timing requirement, who the responsible party is, who the reviewing authority is, and who the enforcement authority is. And we discussed this at the planning committee. It is our plan to meet with the county supervisors. We have a meeting set up for October 9th for members of the planning committee and staff to meet with Alpine County Supervisor Terry Woodrow and Amador County Supervisor Lynn Morgan with regards to this and several other pressing issues. And with that, I open that for discussion.
So this is another discussion that we want to have along the lines of, we might be a logical entity to do this kind of thing because there isn't any other logical entity in the picture here locally, and would it be under the general umbrella of if the counties wanted to do this, that they would be funding it, not taking on unfunded responsibilities, which makes no sense, clearly.
And the additional discussion we had at the planning committee was asking Michael if he thought the staff had the resources to do monitoring. We may meet with others funding, bring in other entities with the expertise to monitor as needed and so on. And Michael, I think you said you thought all this was manageable. It's just a matter of having it funded so that we can pay for that labor.
Admittedly, having seen the entire list of mitigations, which I don't recall the last time I saw it, but it impressed me that it is lengthy and broad. So we'll be thinking through carefully what we might be able to say yes to in terms of taking on mitigation and monitoring duties with funding.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, my reaction reading this is, I'm all for compliance, but it looked like we might be biting off a large responsibility and relieving the counties of their responsibilities. And you're saying we're not going to do it unless it's funded.
There was, yes, that we wouldn't be doing the mitigation monitoring work unless it was funded, but the enforcement part that in our view clearly falls on the counties. So we would just be picking up the phone and saying, we saw a non-compliance, here's the specifics, go get them. Not that we would be trying to be enforcing entities. That really drags us into a whole different space. It's not getting details.
Good. Any questions, Bob, or the audience? Comments?
So the next step is the meeting with the supervisors and start to see what their thoughts might be on this.
And so staff is looking for direction, and I think the direction is to get involved and work with the counties to assist them with their mitigation responsibilities.
Should say there was an interesting piece of information that we got just before the planning committee meeting, and Nate was at the meeting and confirmed it. Essentially, the county doesn't really have the resources, and I think back in 2006, 2007, when KMR had and the development company had a lot of work that they wanted to get done, get permitted, the county said, step up with some funds so we can hire a consultant to do the necessary mitigation monitoring. And so a consultant was hired, I think for a period of a year, so that the proper monitoring could be done for that period of time, reported to the county. There was a cost of, I think Nate said, of $70,000 for that work. And then, of course, after no more permits were needed, it was dropped, which is why, and the counties haven't stepped up, which is why we see the situations that we have.
Any other comments? from the audience, questions? Moving on to 8K, discussion and possible action regarding the district's role in the removal of stored equipment from the school site, estimated costs and work plan. Manager Sharp.
Yeah, the district has received numerous comments on the school site, the equipment that was left there, on the side of it. And we have approached Kirkwood Resort Development with a plan to clean up the site. They have enthusiastically agreed to assist in that effort, and also Vail has agreed to participate in the effort. So it's a great community effort to clean up the school site. It's a much needed improvement in that area. The district would be completing work at KRD's cost for providing labor and the cost of ACES to come on site and actually remove these items. So the district staff is looking for approval to be involved in this project and to donate the use of our loaders to transport it, but our direct costs such as that incurred by ACES to be paid for by Resort Development. We have met with ACES earlier in the week and have discussed the use of multi-dumpsters, recycling efforts, and their representatives will be getting back to the district with their proposals for removal of these items. And once again, I think it's great that representatives from the districts, KCA, KPS, KRD, and Vail to work together to complete an eyesore in the districts.
Okay. So we would be donating the loaders. We would not be on the hook for the ACES expenses. And would district personnel be involved, or?
Yeah, and so the cost that we would be billing would be the time of our district personnel and ACES. The cost for the loaders, which is actually usually a cost, we would absorb that.
Comments?
I think this is great. I think this is a really good thing to have us be doing, and we're kind of stuck on this topic not so long ago, a couple of months ago. It seemed like nobody could get enthused about it, and something happened. I'm not sure where and what, but I think just reasonable people recognizing something that could be done for the community, and I appreciate that moving forward. Very nice.
Thank you for cleaning it up.
Well, I am John Ryder, Managing Director of KRD, and to be quite honest, as the new guy, I am delighted that there's an opportunity that presented itself for us to all work together and maybe start off on a new foot as to what's been, opposed to what's been happening historically. I think the opportunity for us as developer and KMR and the PUD is to work together is an exceptional opportunity.
Great. So
I thank Michael for doing some legwork to help get this thing kicked off.
I'll motion approval for the district's participation along these lines.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're going to call this the Judy Flynn cleanup effort.
Is there going to be a statue?
We'll leave.
Statues.
We're going to leave one transformer.
Thank you.
Plaque.
So item 8L is the closed session. I think we'll defer on that and cover the rest of the meeting first. Committee reports. Finance.
Actually,
I'm sorry. Skip general manager report. Excuse me. It's item 9, general manager report.
so in your packet, you'll see the deadline for construction activities. This is something that we do every year. This basically lets our contractors know and our homeowners know that there's a deadline of October 15th for the construction of any utility lines in the valley. For those of you that have been here several years, you know that we've seen major snows in October, and it's a good time to get everything buttoned up and ready. So this is a definite deadline that we've set. Any questions on that? Also in your packet, you'll see the Emerson Electric's report. As promised, they have come back and certified all of our multipliers on all of our meters. They have looked at many of our meters. They have found some issues with certain meters that we were addressing. So I think this is something that just needs to be continuously addressed as far as making sure that our cash registers out in the field are accurately tabulated. So they have fulfilled their part of our agreement.
Michael, all the wiring errors, how come those weren't noticed in the last time they did this?
I don't know, but there certainly is. They noticed some. They noticed the wastewater treatment plant's wiring errors, but they missed the meadows altogether. So,
Well, and the lifts, the errors there.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe this was a closer inspection that based on problems that were associated with their last inspection. And also having to put stuff in writing maybe made them more diligent.
Do you think this is complete or an ongoing exercise?
I think
in
it's-
verifying that our in-the-field cash registers are indeed tabulating correctly.
Yeah, I think this is an ongoing, definitely ongoing. I think Ed would have mentioned that water meters have to be calibrated and checked on a regular basis. Electric meters are the same way. And I think that our cash registers, we have a program that Brandy manages where we replace 10% of our propane meters every year. And, I just think that we can't be too careful with making sure that the utilities that we put out there, and this all has to do with performance reporting and the effort that, if we've done any major improvements, it's with, checking our cash registers and making sure that they're registered correctly.
So in reading that report, I didn't see anything in there that looked like it was resulting in inaccurate readings or resolve wiring issues and things that needed to be fixed, but it wasn't bad cash register. Was it?
Well, no, but the wiring does impact. I think at one of the instances, the wiring is a 2-wire instead of a 3-wire, and that could result in a 20% decrease in electrical consumption. So
Missed that.
the wiring has an impact on the actual, what it's going to read.
Yeah.
But not the multiplier.
Well, I guess I will ask, what is your confidence in Emerson at this point? And if it's an ongoing process, should we be looking at another firm potentially, to check their work or do the work the next time? I have to say, from my perspective, over the last couple of years with Emerson, there have been a number of errors, and I can't sit here and say I have 100% confidence in them.
Granted,
But you're closer to it than we are.
Yeah, I'm impressed by two things with Emerson. One is that once the problems were found, the district enthusiastically asked for a resolution. They came up and met our resolution and actually did it and completed it with positive results. And secondly, they were our main testers out in the Out Valley project. And from all indications, they did really good work on the Out Valley project as well. So I'm inclined to believe that they are a good firm and that we should continue to use them.
You feel the same way, Brandy?
I do.
So are the wiring problems that were found, are they things that we would expect our own personnel to be able to detect if they're trained in observing those things? Or do we need an outside agency to do this just because?
At the Meadows, that's something you'd have to remove the meter and actually look at the socket to see it. And I don't know if that's part of a regular inspection by Brandy's crew.
It is not part of a regular inspection. I think going forward that our team has gotten a lot of training through these inspections with Emerson, and we would be in a better position to find things like this. But one of the recommendations is just that all of our panels should have locks or seals of some sort, and a lot of them don't. So that's, we need to make sure we're in good working order, seal everything so that it can't be disturbed, and then move forward.
please continue.
Rick's going to continue general manager update.
Morning.
Good morning.
On August 20th, the district had the pleasure of having Kim Hannigan, a new State Water Resources Control Board Division inspector, come up and take a look at our facilities. It had been 2 years since we had a previous inspection, and so I'm pleased to announce that the actual inspection went really well. We were lucky enough to have Kim Hannigan come up with 2 other parties from the state. One was an assistant, and another one was a second day on the job new employee named Steve, who wanted to impress his boss, Kim, with all that he knew about the system. So all in all, again, the inspection went really well, and some of the discrepancies that we have are how we're monitoring our tanks, inspecting our tanks, and I think with the help of engineering, we'll be able to resolve some of these issues. In the board's packet on page 128 and 129 is a brief recap of the visit from our water superintendent, Derek Dornbrook, and some of those items that are listed within that email. For example, the lead and copper sample data that was missing, she has since received. Being new to us and in our facilities, she didn't realize that she had most of all of the information that she didn't see during the inspection, but we've since had correspondence with her, and again, she's quite satisfied. We are awaiting the report to respond back to the state on anything else that she might have seen within the books, and once we receive the report, we'll of course present that to Operations and Capital and the board for review. And is there any questions about that email that's in the packet?
The only question I had at all was that I know that we were supposed to empty the water tanks and inspect them and so on, and I think that was planned to still be done this year, but I think we haven't done it, or have we done it?
No, we're working with Bennett Engineering on a plan to actually have Bennett inspect those tanks and come up with a protocol for what, that inspection and what we would do, in case of, spraying them down and what the construction work plan would be. So we're working with Ed on that right now.
Does somebody still have to go down in that empty tank and look at it at some point? I'm sure Dave Waddle appreciates that.
We'll let him know your comments.
Continuing on, just wanted to update the board on the aquifer levels. As you know, we track our monitoring, our levels in all the wells quite closely, especially this time of year. And you notice the streams are drying up, and well 2, our most shallow well, is still holding at 24.5, 25 feet. However, we're noticing our pumping of the well, the drawdown is becoming much more apparent. So we're still using well 2 primarily, and then backing up with wells 4 and 5, and using wells 4 and 5 aquifer as sort of the storage tank. And the aquifer levels for wells 4 and 5 are at 170 feet. Looking at the data we had from last year, that level, with different pumping practices, the aquifer levels for 4 and 5 this time last year were around 128. So again, we see a huge gain with just pumping practices on how we manage our water. We'll continue to introduce well 3, which is still a pretty good producer, but you'll notice in the pumping schedule on page 130 in the board packet that well 3 is not used very much. It's still a good well. We'll primarily use that in the winter with 4 and 5, but right now we're just kind of pumping it along. One thing that was noticed during the inspection from the state is that there's a small leak at well 3 in one of the gaskets, so we'll address that as well. And unless there's any other questions about aquifer, I'll just move on to the wastewater treatment plant. And I'm pleased to announce to the board, and I also mentioned this at Operations and Capital, for the first time we were able to announce that everything was green. Everything was working in the wastewater treatment plant.
It's the first time we recorded history.
Yeah. And unfortunately, since the committee met, we've got an issue with one of our machines.
Of course.
Good news and bad news. centrifuge that we use to desludge the plant is acting up. We're looking at it now. Hopefully it's a simple fix, but if not, we may have to bring in some outside resources to resolve a control issue. But 99.9% of it's working really well. And staff's doing a good job of trying to keep things out. Moving on, and something that was mentioned in operations and capital, just give the board a quick update on the Timber Creek townhomes. Phase 1 has been completed, and as you know, the board's accepted the improvements. And Michael had offered during the committee meeting to give anybody a tour of those improvements, which are underground. And as of September 1st, the deposit from the developers has been received, and the meter's running. So for the next year, we'll monitor and watch the improvements for any failures or issues. And then after a year, of course, we'll deposit back to the developer. Last week on Wednesday, Earl Curtis, a consultant that's hired by the district to do the fire flow inspection for the facilities, was complete, and that inspection went well. There were no major corrections, and so we'll continue to work with the developer for their CO, which they hope to get as soon as possible.
I think that CO was originally scheduled for January 1st, right?
I believe so.
Oh, boy.
Or earlier.
Yeah, way early.
Earlier.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact first date.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the benefit of using modular construction.
Interesting.
Um,
Sorry, Michael, keep going.
No, that's fine. The contractor that's working on the site now, Jordan, has the unit, if you're looking at the units going closer to the road, is about 90% complete. The other one's about 80% complete. And they've learned a lot through the construction process, and so we'll see what the next step is for them. But we're pleased to be able to see those units get completed. And we've also offered them a snow removal. We'll be offering them a snow removal contract this year as well. So, and finally, I'd like to thank everybody for their participation. Help me out.
Participation.
For the 10K run yesterday. I'd like to thank all the volunteers who came out and the runners. Great event, and I have T-shirts for the board. So after the meeting, of course, we'll pass you a lovely 2015 35th annual Kirkwood 5K, 10K run T-shirt. I think we had almost 100 runners, including kids, come out and participate. And with the new change of the 5K course being all trail, I thought it was well received. A lot of runners appreciated being off the mountain. We had a couple runners, unfortunately, came and said, "You changed it, you moved it, I'm not going to run." So there's always going to be one or two. But all in all, the event went really well. We appreciate the help from Tuttle Mountain Milers. The Rite of Passage group that came out with 6 student athletes that were volunteering at different points in the race course. CAL FIRE sent a fire engine in from the basin to help support the fire department in the event of a medical emergency. We had to hike somebody off the mountain. They had an engine here. So again, all in all, I think everybody had a great time. And there's talk of next year maybe introducing a half marathon into the event, as well as tying that half marathon into a series to coincide with Tuttle Mountain Milers, Kokanee, and Flume half marathons. And also, I should thank Vail Resorts for their epic program. They did donate a cross-country pass to use the facilities and, of course, the trails. And working with Marty, their EMT trail supervisor with the resort yesterday, talking with him, he very supportive of the event and was glad to be able to provide, for example, trash cans and miscellaneous things on the trail itself to make it a successful event.
Were there any injuries on the 5K participants particularly? Because Michael and I talked about, my concern that we're suddenly going to take people that are maybe more casual runners and we're going to take a relatively easy course off the board and give them something that's got a lot of tripping hazards and rolling stones and stuff.
We didn't have any injuries reported. If there were some, I wasn't aware of them. And we tried to build that 5K route mostly on fire roads and better, more stable trails. 10K, it was all over the place. You had everything out there. But for the 5K, we kept that in mind, and we'll continue to do so in the future. That's it for me, Michael. Unless
We have some maintenance activities that we'd like to show off. We painted the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
And you can see here that we had some bad scaling on one side of the wall, and we repaired that scaling and painted it out. And if you take a look, we've had a lot of nice comments. And I think that instead of having 3 or 4 colors to the wastewater treatment plant, we are matching it in one color, so it's real nice. Also did some roof repair work. It was real needed. If you can see in that shadow, there's actually green moss growing in that area. We were able to strip it out and put in a coating and repair it, and hopefully we've gotten the leaks taken care of on the wastewater treatment plant. Also painted the well number 2, so it has a nice appearance. Brandish crews have ordered and are waiting for delivery of the depth pit improvements. So that should happen within this month. And we completed the cinder wall over at the employee housing. Asphalt repairs have been done. This is an area over by the rec center leading up to the powerhouse. And Rick's fire hydrant that was damaged by a clumsy motorist has been put back together, replumbed, and Peter Dornbrook has welded it up and painted it up, and is now a new member of the community, so we're happy about that. And unless there's any question, that concludes the manager's report.
What about the installation of the flying saucers on the manholes to reduce infiltration next spring?
I know Derek has done some of those, has installed some of those. I don't know if he's, we can give you a report on that.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah. I know
And
he's
then
done some.
the only other question I had was, given the prediction of the El Nino and possibly, bigger events than we've had in the last number of years, do you do anything special to prepare for, rain on snow events and so on, or is that what we prepare for in any case?
More the latter. We didn't prepare for the last 4 years of drought. We prepared for the 2010-11 year, and then we react to the drought. So yeah, we try to prepare for the worst or the best.
Any other questions for Michael, General Manager's report?
Just one brief one. When we were going through the budgets, there was a comment that we'd spent something like $8,600 on, sounded like overtime for employees to work on the barbecue event. I don't recall when we look at the barbecue event, the results. Is that included in there as part of our assessment of how well we did? So it's not just materials and stuff. We actually have labor costs as part of the.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, and it's not overtime, that's straight time.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Rick. Committee reports. Finance?
The only thing that happened in finance that we didn't cover already is we asked Randy Finken to take a look at our overall cash flow and debt service and look for any recommendations. And the main one he identified is that we don't have as notes become due, it's not even every year. There are peaks in it. And so he suggested evaluating maybe some refinancing that would smooth things out. Otherwise, there wasn't anything large that he noticed. We also asked him to verify that the 5-year cash flow has all of the debt service accurately, and that you just get one other set of eyes looking at that.
And it did have some refinancing in it. Is that true?
Well, it has the potential to do refinancing. Again, the original strategy was assuming good snow years, use the cash to reduce rates as rapidly as possible.
So the cash waterfall we looked at today does not have refinancing in it. And that's another little tool we might use if needed.
Well, in the 5-year time frame, those peak payments don't occur there. They're a little bit further out.
But I think the budget does include not paying off the short-term maturities.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, we currently assume that we have to, yes, we currently assume we have to refinance. The duration of the refinance, we're using 35 years at 4.5% as a conservative scenario.
And on the cash waterfall, we talked about by some point in the future, not having accrued the property tax
Right.
coming to us. Will we see that by the next time?
I think the suggestion is to do that the next budget cycle, as opposed to changing an existing budget in the middle of the year.
I mean, it just seems like it could be a fairly significant item, right? If we didn't get the property tax until 3 months later than it showed on the cash waterfall, then December 18th might look even scarier than it does. And also, we talked last time about how the counties seem to be a little bit slow in paying us the property taxes. They're not hitting their due dates. So those two things together concern me when I look at the cash waterfalls. It's like, how real a picture is it?
Well, why don't we review that in the next finance committee, and we'll report back in the next board meeting on that. That's all the other items were discussed. All right.
Planning?
Planning, the one thing I wanted to mention is a revival of an action item that we had earlier, and that's on the employee housing, how we try to get money from development as it occurs to support our employee housing needs and more broadly in the valley, all employee housing needs. And we kind of went for a default option by turning employee housing charges into a connection fee, and that's in place and is already being charged on the new development here. But Michael wants to bring this back and thinks there's reason to re-examine that and see if we can take a broader look again with some renewed interest on the part of the other active parties that have to be part of the discussion. Any further comments on that, Michael?
No, it's one of the other issues that we'll be meeting with the county supervisors on October 9th.
Yeah.
And then finally, last but not least, operations and capital.
I was not able to attend, but I'm just looking at the agenda. It seems like we've covered just about everything. I think there was some question, I got an email question on the captain on-call pay. Item 6B, I don't know if that was discussed at the committee or what the status of that discussion is.
Yeah, so we're going to bring back, October will mark the 90-day trial period that we have for the new on-call system that we've, you remember that I asked that we bring that back after 90 days to, show how we've been doing and see if the board wants to continue on that. And so we'll bring that back before not only operations, but the board at our October meeting.
Was there anything else that you want to mention that happened at the meeting?
It was a delightful meeting. I'm sorry you missed it.
I am too. Maybe that's why.
No, I don't think there was anything else. Judy, you were there. I remember, were you in operations?
No, I wasn't.
Oh.
Any questions from the board or audience on committee reports? Hearing none. Item 11 is general discussion opportunity for board members to ask questions for clarification, provide information to staff, committee updates, request staff to report back on a matter, or direct staff to place a matter on a subsequent agenda. Anybody have any?
Yeah, I had one. It seems to me as I look at the board package that we're approaching things in a certain way, which I would describe as a very top-level agenda and an extremely detailed package to back it up. And having all the detail in the backup is great. That's responsible, transparent reporting to the community and all parties. But it seems like there's a pretty big gap between those two that if you read what the agenda item is going to be and then you try to dive into all that detail and figure out, what's it all about, what's the intent of the discussion, what's staff's thinking, that you got to kind of synthesize all of that. And wonder if there isn't some intermediate step where we could have a little bit more of a summary of the topics and what staff is going to recommend as a lead-in to the board meetings. So that's just food for thought.
Well, my reaction to that is, on some topics, currently, you do produce a cover memo. But I guess in the past, there were more cover memos. And that may just be a issue of staff resources, time, or?
It's all about time. We and the previous general manager would write a staff report or management report on every issue just about. And due to the staff resources and the amount of work that we've taken on, we just don't have the time to do so. So I don't really know how I would, either limit the number of agenda topics and items that we're looking at to a number that I could manage, in that fashion, or not do it. It's my only two thoughts at this point. But I'll certainly try to write management reports whenever I have the opportunity.
Well, I guess I'd encourage you to write them if you have the opportunity on the stuff that you want action on. Any other general discussion topics? So what do we do here? We adjourn the meeting temporarily to go into closed session in an hour?
Yeah, we close the open portion of the meeting to go into closed session.
Is it possible to contact Dick earlier, or is that?
Yeah, I'm going to try to. I think he's available. So, I'll give him a call real quick. And,
Here, we could go tour of the underground facility.
Timber Creek, yeah.
Thank you, everybody.